On September 7th, 2025, we have a total lunar eclipse in Pisces. For those unfamiliar with the term, a lunar eclipse is the perfect alignment of the sun, earth, and moon. From an astrological perspective, this alignment creates a period of instability for the lights, meaning the sun and the moon, which represent our will and our emotional body. In this video, we're going to analyze this event from a mundane perspective, looking at its potential influence in the United States. Eclipses are significant astrological markers of beginnings and endings. A lunar eclipse in particular represents a culmination, bringing what's been in the shadows into conscious clarity, as the sun's light is temporarily blocked from reaching the emotional and instinctual moon. The events marked by a lunar eclipse could unfold over the next 3 to 6 months. Let's look at the chart for Washington, D.C. at the exact time of the lunar eclipse. The chart has Sagittarius rising, which makes Jupiter the ruler of the entire chart. This gives Jupiter a special influence on the nation's core identity and its overall outlook during this period, defining it by its sense of justice, its foundational beliefs, and its optimistic philosophical approach to expansion. The eclipse falls in the 4th house, which in mundane astrology represents the land, the nation's people as opposed to its leadership, and occupations like building, mining, and agriculture. The moon in Pisces in the 4th house is approaching a conjunction with the North Node, which points to a fated event or a new destined direction for the people. An eclipse is an affliction to the moon, so this can indicate widespread discontent or suffering among the people, leading to some tough questions for the nation. This suggests that the emotional confrontation brought on by the eclipse is a necessary step toward the nation's destiny, a path that may require a national reckoning with themes of compassion, confusion, and sacrifice. The moon represents the emotional body of the nation, and it is in Pisces, a sign associated with sensitivity, intuition, and the unbounded nature of human experience. This eclipse will bring into the light what has been hidden or shrouded in the cover of habitual emotional responses. This is a profound moment of shadow work for the country. This culmination marks the end of a long cycle for the nation's foundations, which is particularly significant as the country approaches its 250th anniversary. This domestic reckoning in the 4th house is in direct opposition to the national leadership in the 10th house. This confrontation will also be influenced by how the nation manages its shared resources and debt. As the ruler of this eclipse, Jupiter, is powerfully placed in the 8th house of financial transformation. The moon's afflicted condition is therefore tied to the state of its ruler in the house of debt and crisis, adding weight to the transformation of the people and national resources. An eclipse of the moon in the 2nd decanate of Pisces can also bring the death of an illustrious person. On the other side of the chart, the sun is in the 10th house in Virgo next to the South Node. While the sun in the 10th house usually signifies a prosperous and popular government, its conjunction with the South Node at a full moon suggests a time for the dissolution and release of old ways of being. With the sun, the symbol of the nation's character, placed in Virgo, this can point specifically to a release of past standards for workers, public health, and commerce. This is reinforced by the sun's opposition to the moon, which can indicate discontent among the workers and disharmony between the people and their rulers. The presence of the sun and Mercury in the 10th house indicates that national leadership and the media will be a central part of this process. It is a moment when previous narratives around these Virgoan topics are brought to a head. Mercury, the ruler of Virgo, is also in its own domicile in the 10th house, and it's exalted, and it's moving toward a conjunction with the sun. This connection, which is considered favorable for speeches by prominent statesmen, suggests a critical point of communication or a definitive statement from national leadership about the nation's reputation. Because the sun is in Virgo, its expression is directly tied to the condition of its ruler Mercury, which is in its own domicile and the house of leadership. This lends an added weight and clarity to the message being given, potentially revealing truths about trade and labor practices. Now let's look at the remaining planetary placements. Saturn is at the 29th degree of Pisces in the 4th house. The final degree of any sign is called the anaretic degree, representing a point of completion and a crisis that forces a final action. Saturn in the 4th house is traditionally considered a tough placement for the government and the people, and can signify a loss of popularity for leadership and a period of unemployment or hardship for the masses. For Saturn, this marks the end of a long cycle of lessons about the structure of the nation's home life and its foundations. This final degree suggests that a decisive and unavoidable pressure will be applied to those foundations. Because Saturn is in Pisces, its lessons are ultimately governed by its ruler Jupiter, which is in the 8th house, linking the nation's foundational challenges to its guiding beliefs around financial matters. Pluto is in Aquarius in the 3rd house. The 3rd house governs local transportation, communication, and media, as well as the thoughts of the people. Pluto's presence here signifies a period of profound transformation and power struggles, particularly related to group activity. A core expression of Pluto is the conflict of opposing interests and the tendency to split groups into rival factions. This can manifest as a deep-seated battle for control over the national narrative, with the suppression of facts and the distortion of information creating a great menace to progress. This points to a major shift in how information is shared and how it's controlled within our local communities and social networks. As Pluto is in Aquarius, its actions are ultimately governed by its ruler Saturn, which, as we mentioned before, is in the 4th house. And this links the power struggles over information to the nation's core structures and foundations. Mars is in Libra in the 11th house, along with the midheaven. The 11th house is the nation's legislature, its goals and alliances. Mars is the most energetic planet, and it governs the nation's military, law enforcement, and industrial workers. With Mars in Libra, a sign of balance and justice, its energy meets some resistance. This can indicate that the nation's legislative bodies could face friction, and the nation's public reputation, represented by the midheaven, will be tied to a struggle for a sense of fairness in matters of law and justice. The energy of Mars is so powerful that it may indicate that these groups will be at the forefront of a dispute or a call for action. Because Mars is in Libra, its action is ultimately governed by its ruler Venus, which is in the 9th house, tying military and legislative matters to themes of peace and diplomacy and foreign trade, and to the courts and spiritual or religious leaders. Uranus is in Gemini in the 7th house. The 7th house governs foreign nations and their attitudes, war and international disputes, and treaties. Uranus is known as the planet of extremes and unexpected happenings. Its placement here suggests that the nation could face unpredictable, even cataclysmic shifts in its alliances or opposition. Its influence might incite rebellion and dissatisfaction with established conditions. This could manifest as a sudden severing of old ties or the emergence of new surprising diplomatic partnerships that might change the entire complexion of the nation's foreign policy. As Uranus is in Gemini, its disruptions are ultimately governed by its ruler Mercury, which is in the 10th house, linking the sudden changes in foreign relations to the discourse of the nation's leadership and media. Venus is in Leo in the 9th house. The 9th house governs international commerce and shipping, the law, churches, and religion, and all places where opinions are publicly expressed. Traditionally, Venus in this house is considered fortunate for foreign trade and helps preserve friendly relations with other nations. With Venus in Leo, a sign of royalty and pride, the nation's values in these areas could be on prominent public display. Given that Venus is ruled by the Sun in this chart, which is afflicted by the South Node in the 10th house, a leadership facing an internal reckoning could lean on diplomacy and public displays of harmony in 9th house matters to manage its image. The harmonious energy of Venus is therefore tied to the condition of its ruler, the Sun, whose condition in the 10th house puts it in a bit of a vulnerable position. Neptune is in the 5th house in Aries. The 5th house governs national creativity, speculation, and children. The presence of Neptune, whose influence exaggerates hopes and expectations, can be a factor in vast undertakings and utopian enterprises. Neptune's energy in the assertive sign of Aries can indicate a blurring of the lines around the nation's sense of self and its creative identity. It can point to a period of confusion in the stock market or a loss of clear direction in matters related to the nation's children. With Neptune being retrograde and conjunct Saturn, its influence could bring about a chaotic condition of affairs or popular uprisings and discontent related to these areas. It could signify a period of instability, confusion, or deception. However, because Neptune is also sextile Pluto and Uranus, its energy might find a progressive outlet through social groups and a reordering of national systems. As Neptune is in Aries, its idealism is ultimately governed by its ruler Mars, which is in the 11th house, linking the emotional and spiritual movements of the nation to aggressive and decisive action in its legislature. This total lunar eclipse is a profound turning point. The placements in this mundane chart suggest a period of immense change where the nation's foundations are brought to a point of reckoning. It is a time for us to see clearly and to understand the cycles that are coming to a close and the new ones that are beginning. So what are your thoughts? Have you already been observing any of these themes in your local communities? If you enjoyed this content, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share. And if you're interested in learning more about nodal transits in your own life, get on the wait list for my Nodal Transits email course, which will be launching soon.